So is there an ideal way to price your brand's products and services? Or is it just a case of simply testing the market and going with what works? In this video, we'll be covering the simple but effective step-by-step process that you can use to discover the best pricing strategy for you and your business. In a nutshell, an effective pricing strategy should help a business generate as much profit as possible from as many transactions as possible. In the same breath, they also have to make sure that the price is right for what the customer is willing to pay. So the first lesson here is that the market dictates the price that you can charge. There's no point trying to charge 10x what your competitors are charging if your product is not at least 10x better than theirs. Customers have never had more buying power. With a few clicks of a mouse, they can browse alternative options and see what suits their needs best. This means it's never been more important to understand how best to price your products and services. By getting your pricing strategy wrong, you're likely losing customers and potential clients right at the end of your sales funnel. If a customer is looking at the price of your product, then they are most likely ready to make a purchase. So getting your pricing right is essential if you truly want to convert as many prospects into new customers. And speaking of customers, this takes us swiftly on to the first step of our perfect pricing process: know your market. The first step to any marketing or branding related process is diagnosis. We first need to understand what we're working with before we start suggesting solutions. Taking some time to assess your market is absolutely vital. You need to take some time to gather some data and research on your top competitors who offer the same thing as you. By doing this, you can begin to realize what price range you're likely going to be able to work within. Understanding what your competitors charge means you can then decide how much your product compares to theirs. If it's around the same and you don't actually offer anything extra, then you're likely going to have to work within the same range of your competitors. This method is very much based around a market-oriented pricing approach. However, if your offering has something unique or special about it, it is likely that you could price yourself above the current range and charge a little bit more. Now, knowing your market is key, but you have to be honest with yourself in regards to how well your actual product or service compares to the rest of the market, which takes us on to the next step of understanding how good your product or service actually is. Being honest with yourself and deciding how good your product or service is in comparison to your competitors can be quite a humbling experience. Your business is your baby, and it's sometimes hard to be quite frank and realize that your product or service isn't as good as others out there. If you want to charge more than the current market range, you have to offer something different or of a higher value than the other players out there in your market. And the more honest you are with yourself at this point, the far less painful it's going to be later on down the line. Instead of lying to yourself and thinking that your product is amazing when it simply just isn't, and selling literally nothing, you could just be realistic and actually generate a respectable number of sales. A variable factor which sets the lower limit to what you can charge is how much it costs for you to actually deliver your product or service. Which takes us on to our next step, which is work out your costs. This is something you're already probably fully aware of, but you can't obviously sell something for less than it takes to make it. It's not bad business, it's just bloody stupid. Something else to keep in mind is tax. For example, if the cost of making a product is $100, for example, and you can sell it for $130, the taxman is going to take around 20% of that $30 profit margin. That leaves you with roughly around $24 profit from each transaction, so keep taxes in mind and don't let it catch you out. Be as detailed as possible regarding your fixed and variable costs. You need to know exactly what it costs to make every single product or service that you're offering. Without having complete clarity here, it's going to be very difficult for you to be confident in your pricing overall and over the long term. And speaking of long term, it's absolutely critical that you choose the best pricing strategy for you in particular in the very beginning so you can really set off on the right foot. So you know how much your competitors are charging and you've been honest with yourself and decided that your product or service is worth more than theirs. You know your cost, and it's time to decide which pricing strategy is best for you. Now, there are a couple of different methods which are commonly used, but after we've completed the previous 3 steps, it should be far more clear which approach that we're going to cover in a moment in this video is going to work best for you. The first approach is cost-based pricing. So cost-based pricing is pretty simple. It basically means calculating the cost needed to make your product and then adding a percentage markup which helps you come to a final price. An example of cost plus pricing would be a little something like this. So the materials cost $30, labor costs $20, and overheads $11, which comes to $61. You then have to decide how much markup you'd like to add. Let's imagine you wanted to mark up your product by 50%. This means your price should be around $91.50. Now, of course, you could round that number up or down, but in general, you'll know that that product is going to be making a 50% profit, give or take, if you sell it at that particular price. This approach is pretty much foolproof as long as you have your costs calculated properly. It's also really simple and ensures every product you are selling is generating a healthy profit if it's sold at the full price. The next approach is market-oriented pricing. The second approach of pricing your product and services is very similar to the approach that we've just covered earlier on in this video. By understanding the market that you're looking to compete within and comparing your product or service with alternatives your customer could choose, you could begin to estimate how much someone would realistically spend on your product. You're basically setting your pricing based on how well your product or service matches with existing offerings in the same market. Now, there are a few variants to this market-oriented pricing, which include pricing above the market or premium pricing. This approach simply means that you give the perception that your brand or offering is a higher quality or more high-end than your competitors by simply just pricing your product just above the highest range currently active in the market. The second approach is copying the market. As the name suggests, this approach simply means finding a competitor which has a similar product and offering to yours in regards to quality and standards, and then just copying their price in order to be competitive. Last but not least, we have penetration pricing or pricing below the market. By pricing your product lower than your competition, you do increase the likelihood that price-sensitive customers will choose you due to price alone. This approach can be great when you initially enter a market. However, beware. If your customers get used to paying a certain price for your product or service, it's going to be very difficult to convince them to pay double or even triple in future for the exact same product. Now, each of the strategies in the market-oriented model have pros and cons. With market-oriented pricing, it's very important to understand the costs of making your product as well as the quality compared to your competitors to accurately price your product and really get the most out of this approach. Next, we have dynamic pricing, also known as time-based or demand-based pricing. These methods simply mean adjusting the price of a product based on the level of demand for a product or service. Airlines use this approach to optimize the profitability of each and every flight by altering the price based on the type of seat, how many seats are left, and also how soon the flight is to departing. Amazon also uses this approach in a slightly different way by utilizing the dynamic pricing model to automatically meet or beat competitors' prices online. This basically means that they are always either matching or priced just below the rest of the internet. This is why the majority of customers just go to Amazon first to check pricing, which is why dynamic pricing can be so effective for certain types of brands if your business model allows it. Next, we have anchor pricing. Anchor pricing is rather clever and is used by many leading businesses in a range of industries. It's basically creating the perception around your product or service by setting a higher price for the product or service initially, only to reduce that price to make it seem like the customer is getting a really great deal. This is often used in retail spaces and online pricing pages. It's fairly common for stores to place certain products they want to sell close to other products which are similar but are significantly higher in price. This makes the more moderately priced product look like a far better deal, encouraging the customer to perceive the level of value that they're actually receiving far more than what they're actually getting in reality. Likewise, on online pricing pages, often the price of the most expensive package or option is as high as possible in order to make the middle package look more desirable. Anchor pricing can be incredibly effective if you know how to use it properly. Here's just one really important tip. Always offer free shipping, and this is why customers love it. Think, you're on Amazon, right? Comparing two products which you are most likely going to buy. One is $50 with free shipping and the other one is $40 with $10 shipping. Which one are you going to choose? It's obvious, because in our mind we're thinking, okay, I'm getting a $50 product or I'm getting a $40 product. So although this isn't a pricing strategy per se, just make sure that you always include the shipping costs in the actual price of your product so your customer feels like they're getting a better deal with the free shipping. Always do this. It makes your products look more valuable. Trust me, you're going to sell so much more. And the last tip is always be open to change. So you finally feel like you have your pricing perfectly put in place. So, I don't know, give yourself a clap, a pat on the back, or eat some cake or something. But the truth is, finding your perfect price right now may not last forever. Keeping an open mind and understanding that you may just need to change your pricing a little bit depending on how the market evolves and also how well your product does. Supply and demand is a pretty simple concept. If supply is high and demand is low, then the price is generally far lower, and vice versa. So the same applies. If one of your products is outselling the rest, use this to your advantage and don't be afraid to raise your pricing. But only do this if you think your customers will be happy paying for it. You have to put in a little bit of time to really get your pricing strategy right to begin with, but over time you can really begin to understand how much your customers value your product and services and how much they're willing to pay. Treat it as a learning process and begin to find out what price works best. When determining the best pricing strategy to adopt for your business, you also need to keep your branding in mind. There are lots of different moving parts when you're building a brand, so just be aware of it and be careful. If you want to discuss these moving parts, then feel free to book a discovery session with me in the description below. And also, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video and hopefully learn something. Click the like button, leave a comment, let us know what you found the most valuable, and also click subscribe. We've got some incredible stuff coming for you in the next couple of months. And on that note, I'll see you in the next video.